you're watching this, then you're probably not my brother who told me he'd rather watch me suffer in person than on a YouTube video. And if you somehow stumbled on this video in the wild and you'd like to stick around to watch me suffer, then the only thing you need to know about me is that I have no clue what I'm talking about, but I'm going to talk about it anyway. Today, I'm going to talk about something that has brought me both a lot of joy and a lot of stress. I'm talking about, of course, the Giants. If you couldn't tell from the outfit or the huge flag in the background, I am a die-hard Giants fan. I am such a fan that altar behind me, the one covered in bobbleheads and baseballs, that existed for about 6 months before I even thought about making a YouTube channel about sports. I love the Giants. They make up my core childhood memories. I was practically raised at what is now Oracle Park, watching Barry Bonds hit home runs into McCovey Cove. My best birthday was 2010, November 1st, 2010, when the Giants won their first World Series in San Francisco. Best game I've ever gone to was at Oracle Park, was Matt Cain's perfect game. The best playoff game I've ever been to, 2014 NLCS, Game 5. Michael Morse ties it up in the 8th inning, and then Travis Ishikawa walks it off in the 9th. Really great game. Really great game. 2021, greatest season I've ever seen. Sucks that we didn't make it past the NLDS, but what a season. Anyway, point is, I have spent a lot of time talking about baseball and talking specifically about Giants baseball. Mostly to the people in my life who are tired of hearing me talk about Giants baseball, which is why today I'm going to talk about Giants baseball in this video. Given how the season went, this is not going to be a particularly positive video. But before I move on to the negativity, I do want to focus on some of the highlights of the season. The first of which being the young players. I think that Patrick Bailey is still an excellent defensive catcher, one of the best of the league. I do wish he would improve his hitting a little bit, but you know what? He's still an incredible defensive catcher, and it's great to have him. Elliot Ramos, solid fielder, better hitter. It was great to see him hit for power this season. And then, Tyler Fitzgerald, Grant McCray, good to have them on the team. They were fun to watch. I liked their energy at the bat. I do wish Tyler were a better fielder, and I hope he focuses on that in this offseason. As for McCray, you know what? He hasn't quite had enough games to prove that he's the real deal, but I do hope that he uses spring training as a way to prove himself. So hopefully we'll see him again next season. But there were two moments in the season that I want to focus on, and those were Elliot Ramos's splash hit and Blake Snell's no-hitter. Let's start with the splash hit because I want to spend a little more time on the no-hitter. But Elliot Ramos hit a splash hit as a right-hander, and that's pretty fucking impressive. It was the first splash hit ever hit by a right-hander. Never been done before. The only other time I've ever seen it come close was 2021 with Buster Posey. He hit one that would have gone into the water if it hadn't been for a poorly placed water tower. You know what? Shame on the architects, on the Oracle Park architects. If they had moved it over just a little bit, Buster Posey would have had the honor of hitting the first splash hit as a right-hander in Oracle Park history in his last season. But you know what? I am happy for Elliott getting that splash hit. I do wish that douchebag Dave would give him the ball. It's only fair. And the fact that he's not giving him the ball because Elliott doesn't follow Dave on Instagram is pretty ridiculous, if you ask me. So, Dave, stop being a douche, give him the baseball. But otherwise, I'm very happy for Elliott, and you know what? Great moment. It was exciting to see. But I really want to focus on Blake Snell's no-hitter. I really, really love a strong pitching performance. I know that other people prefer to see those big offensive games with lots of hits and lots of home runs and lots of scoring. But I just think that there is something so special about a single guy going in and having such a dominant performance that the other team is completely shut down. And that's why I love to see no-hitters. That's why I love to see perfect games. Even just shutouts are really fun to watch because you've got a guy pitching so well that teams just can't score off him. And at the same time, you have the whole defense behind him playing great to back up his performance. I just think there's something really special about that. And I think it's even more special now that managers are pulling their pitchers a little earlier. Their starting pitchers a little early. I do wish that more managers would give their starters the chance to go deeper into games. Which brings us back to Snell's no-hitter. I am genuinely very thankful to Bob Melvin for letting Blake Snell go all 9 innings of that game. If Bob Melvin had been a different manager, say a manager that went by the name Dave Roberts, Blake Snell would not have gotten his no-hitter. But as special as most dominant pitching performances are, I think there was something just even more special about Blake Snell's no-hitter. And that was that at no point were you ever worried. Like, I've seen a lot of really good pitching performances. Lots of no-hitters on TV, and some perfect games, including Matt Cain's perfect game, which I was present at, lest you forget. And, the pitching is always dominant, but there's always one or two plays by a fielder that saves the game. For Matt Cain, that was Gregor Blanco's catch. Incredible catch, which I remember vividly because, first of all, it was a great catch, and my mother next to me clapped so hard that she cracked her wedding ring. And that's how amazing that catch was. And every dominant pitching performance I've ever watched has had at least one play like that. But not Snell's. Snell's no-hitter didn't have anything like that. The Reds were off balance the entire game. They just could not figure out Snell. And for him to do that and keep it up to the 9th inning, an inning which he had never seen before in his career, is just incredible. It's truly amazing. So, cheers to Blake Snell. Great game, great performance. And yeah, I have no words. It was truly a special game. But now, let's talk about how much the Giants stress me out, especially when they give me an ounce of hope and then fade. For the last 6 years, it feels like we've been promised a team that could go all the way, that could go to the series. And instead, in that period, we've had one team that made it to the playoffs. And now, another season has ended. We've been mathematically eliminated. September 19th, I think, was the execution date. We ended the season with a losing record, 80-82. And we get to watch the Dodgers and the Padres go to the playoffs. Lovely. So then the question is, where did it all go so wrong for us? I think the Giants' first mistake was hiring Farhan Zaidi as president of baseball operations. Now, I say that with the benefit of hindsight, because actually, when he was hired, I was in the let Farhan cook camp. I do understand the power of numbers in baseball, and I was willing to give a numbers guy the chance. I was hoping he would moneyball us into a World Series. He didn't, but I was willing to give him the chance back then. And I am someone who does strongly believe in the power of intuition in baseball. I don't think it's all just numbers, but I do have a degree in mathematics. I've taken stats classes. I work in data science now. I understand the power of analytics, and I understand how important they are in baseball. And so, yeah, I was willing to give Farhan Zaidi a chance to use analytics to get us to a World Series. But I'm starting to think that maybe he's not all that good at analytics, because in the years that he has been our president of baseball operations, he's gotten us to the postseason once, and that season was kind of a fluke. I loved it, don't get me wrong, but that season was a statistical anomaly. There were a lot of guys that season that really played much better than I think anyone would have expected. That was not Farhan Zaidi's number magic. That was just a bunch of guys who were having great seasons. The Giants' second mistake was forcing Bruce Bochy into early retirement. Now, I'm not just saying that because Bochy's a Frenchie and us Frenchies gotta stick together. I'm saying that because Bruce Bochy is an excellent manager and an excellent postseason manager. I mean, for crying out loud, the man won us 3 World Series, and then he came out of retirement and won the Rangers a World Series. Is that really a man you don't want on your baseball team? It upsets me, especially with the benefit of hindsight, that Bruce Bochy was ever forced to retire as our manager. So yeah, retiring Bochy was a mistake. I understand why it was done, although I disagree with it, but I do understand it. And I understand why a numbers guy like Farhan Zaidi would want a manager who's a little less old school and who plays into the numbers game that Zaidi does. And so that's probably why they hired Kapler. Now, I'm actually not going to say that hiring Kapler was a mistake. I actually liked Kapler. I thought he was a pretty good manager, all things considered. I also think that he was screwed over by Giants leadership, including Farhan Zaidi. I think that he kept being promised big signings and big trades, and those never got delivered. And then he was expected to take a kind of mediocre team to the playoffs. Of course he couldn't do that. What did you expect? Listen, I like this team. I do. But without some, serious hitting power, this is not a team that can make it far into the postseason if they make it there in the first place. Even the 2021 team, where guys were overperforming, they only got to the divisional. They only got to the divisional round. They couldn't go further because, they just didn't have... They didn't have it. And really, Zaidi has done this to every manager that the Giants have had since he came into office. I mean, the Giants will be in playoff contention. I mean, they were in playoff contention this year. Slim playoff contention, but there was a moment where it looked like 4 NL West teams could make it to the playoffs. But anyway, the Giants will be in playoff contention, and we're coming up to the trade deadline, and we're getting promised a big move at the trade deadline by Farhan Zaidi, and then he goes and he makes a trade for a guy in his 30s who's injured and sitting on the bench. That's not a big trade. That's not a trade that gets us to the playoffs, that gives us that final push to make it into the playoffs. No wonder none of the Giants managers have been able to make that playoff push. They haven't been given the tools to do it. And it's not like Zaidi has been asking fans to just be cool for a few years because he's rebuilding the team. If that were the case, I would have no problem being cool for a few years and suffering through the mediocrity until our farm system comes to fruition. No, we're being told at the present moment that we have a chance to make it to the playoffs. 6 years we've been told that. And for 6 years, we've gotten nothing except for the 2021 season, which was great, but again, a fluke. And that's not even talking about the harm that Zaidi's management style might have done the team. I genuinely think that his management style, his pinching pennies, trying to get the best deal style, hurt the team's reputation. I mean, just look at what he did to J.D. Davis, how he was treated. Who wants to go to a team that might treat you like that? Or look at what they did to Blake Snell. I think part of the reason that Blake Snell suffered early in the season was because Farhan dragged out that negotiation just to save a few $1 million. So Blake Snell just didn't have enough time in spring training to rest and get back to, his Blake Snellness. And then, as Blake Snell is supposed to be recovering and rehabbing in AAA, he calls him up too early. And what happens? Blake Snell has a disastrous beginning to the season. He can't make it past 4 innings. And there's a point where you're thinking, oh my God, have we ruined this man's career? Fortunately, the answer seems like it's no. I think the no-hitter settled that one for us. But the fact that we were worrying about it at all is a problem. And it was a problem created by Farhan Zaidi. The point is, I think that Farhan Zaidi's management style led to some negative clubhouse vibes. And I am fully of the belief that teams with negative clubhouse vibes don't win World Series. I think it's really important for guys to be happy to play well. I don't think that the clubhouse vibes are super bad on the team. I think that the guys get along well together. But I also think that there is a little undercurrent of anxiety that they could be treated as poorly as J.D. Davis was treated. I just don't think that Farhan Zaidi did the clubhouse vibes any favor. So now we get to the part of the video where I tell you that I wrote a half-assed script for this about a week ago before I went on vacation. And then I came back to film it now, a week later, a day after the official end of the season, when the news has just come out that Farhan Zaidi has been fired. And I tell you this because this next part of my half-assed script is all about how Farhan Zaidi should be fired. And I had this nice big rant planned about how Giants ownership had lost sight of what makes baseball so special. About how they were more interested in pinching pennies than in actually competing, because they knew that no matter what, they would have the audience, either from diehard fans like me or from tech bros with way too much money to burn. So yeah, I had a whole rant planned. It was going to be great. But today, before I started filming, I got the news that Farhan Zaidi had been fired. And that he had been replaced by none other than the great Buster Posey. I'm genuinely thrilled. I'm so excited. I'm really, really excited. So this part of the video is going to be even more chaotic than the part that I scripted. But let's go through it anyway. And let's focus on what I hope that Buster does now that he is the man in charge. And the first thing is, I hope that he can bring some big names to San Francisco. I think he has a better shot of doing that than Farhan Zaidi. And I think part of it is that he was a player himself at one point. And he loves the game of baseball. He loves the Giants. He was a Giant for his entire career, and he got into the ownership group, and now he's the president of baseball operations, which is kind of surprising because I personally thought that he would be focusing on his family, which he can still focus on his family while being president of baseball operations, but I thought he was going to just wait until the kids were in college before coming back. I'm glad he's not. I'm glad he's not. Thank you for coming back, Buster. But I think that Buster has the chance of landing some good players. I'm very hopeful for that. I think that he'll be able to relate to the players. I think he'll be able to walk them through some of the concerns that players have about coming to San Francisco. And I don't see him being as concerned about spending money as Farhan was. I think that Zaidi was really into the whole pinching pennies thing, and I think that Buster Posey will be a little more willing to spend the money that is needed to get players to San Francisco. I think that he understands that the Giants are competing with the Yankees and the Dodgers for these top players. I think that unlike Zaidi, he understands that we have the pockets to compete with the Yankees and the Dodgers. We are one of the big market teams. We have money. We can use it. And I'm hoping, really hoping, that Buster, as president of baseball operations and as part of the ownership group, will be able to get that point across to the other owners. Because I do think there are some owners in this group that have lost sight of the reason why they got into the ownership group. I think they have lost sight of what makes baseball so wonderful and what makes the Giants so special. And I hope that Buster is able to get through to them so that they're a little bit more willing to spend that money that we need to spend if we want superstar players. We can be a competitive team. But beyond getting superstar players, there are obviously a lot of changes that Buster is going to have to make. I think one of the unfortunate changes that he will have to make is firing most of the coaching staff. Especially Bob Melvin, and I've got nothing against Bob Melvin, I just think that there is going to have to be an overhaul of the coaching staff, the front office. Changes need to be made. And with regard to that, here's what I'm hoping to see from Buster. And now, I'm not in any way telling Buster what to do. Why should he care what I think? He has forgotten more about baseball than I've ever learned in my life. But that being said, I do hope that Buster chooses a manager who can do a good job of balancing the numbers and the intuition. I think, that old school gut feeling is so important in baseball. And I think the numbers are important too. I think the most powerful thing, though, is the balance of the two. Because you know what? Sometimes the numbers are saying that you've got to pull a pitcher because, his pitch count is super high and it's like the 8th inning, and statistically he's going to give up a hit. But then your old school intuition is saying, you know what? This guy is still looking strong. Hitters are looking off balanced against him. Let's let him pitch the 9th and see what happens. And sometimes the guy goes ahead and gets a no-hitter. So I think it's important for Buster to hire a manager like that, who can navigate the balance between old school intuition and new school numbers. As for the rest of the coaching staff, obviously I do hope that he takes Barry Bonds in as hitting coach, if Barry Bonds will agree to it. And that's all the speculation I'm going to do. Because in my original script, I was talking a lot more about how I hoped that Buster Posey would deign to be our manager. And I didn't quite get that, but I did get something from Buster, so I'm just happy. So you know what? Who cares what I think Buster should do going forward? I have no clue what I'm talking about, especially not when it comes to baseball.